Members, I'm just going to read the policy out. Okay, good evening and welcome to this committee of the Development Committee. I will now read out the emergency evacuation announcement. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm goes off, please leave the building in an orderly fashion through the nearest fire exit. Please use either the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the fire exit in the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is the island in front of the main entrance to the building. Please do not delay your evacuations to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that the meeting will be audio recorded. Please switch off mobile phones or turn them to silent. Please note that toilet and hand washing facilities are in the foyer. Members of the public, which there is only one, good evening, are reminded that this is an official meeting and the items before us will be debated according to the usual council rules for council meetings to which the public are admitted. Members of the public are not permitted to speak at this meeting unless they have previously registered to speak with Democratic Services. In this way, everyone present will be able to hear the debate and councillors will be able to make an informed decision. Can I please also remind you to be respectful of all those attending the meeting, including other members of the public, councillors and officers. Page 2. Members of the public, we don't need to do the last bit about because no one's going to be recording, so that's handy, members. You don't need to listen to me anymore, do you? Members, there is a need to use microphones during the meeting. When I invite you to speak, please wait until there is a microphone in front of you before speaking, as microphones are needed for the hearing loop and for the audio recording. These are all switched on and ready for you to speak and will be unmuted by officers for you. Please make sure that the microphone is directly in front of your mouth before speaking. Members, voting will be done on a show of hands in line with the Constitution. I will ask for a show of hands for and then against recommendations. I will then also ask for a show of hands for those wishing to abstain from voting. Agendas item 1 and 2, apologies for absences and substitutes. We received apologies from absence from Councillors Tracy Knight, Bob Milne and Stuart Wilson. Councillor Hoy will be substituting for Councillor Knight. Agenda 3, non-members attending, there are none. Agenda 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of March. Are these agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 5, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any members? No, thank you. Did you say so? Oh, sorry. Agenda item 6, items referred from the weekly list 22/01198/Full Arterial Road, Chelmsford Road, Rayleigh. Mike Stranks will present the officer's report. Thank you, Mike.
This application is to the site of the former Michelin's Farm, the wider area.
Can you speak to, sorry, can you speak to the... Can you speak in?
Yep. Start again. This application is to the site of the former Michelin's Farm. We have the A1245, former A130 there, the London, Liverpool Street, Southend, Victoria line here, and the A127 to the south. The site was released from the Green Belt in the council's current allocation plan, and as part of a wider application, if we could see that, please, for industrial development on the balance of the site, but hopefully when it appears in a moment we'll have the corner here, if that's just coming, the GT1 allocation. Yeah, thank you. There you go. That's just an extract out of the council's allocation plan. Members hopefully be familiar with that. While we're on this image, I'd beg that you hover on that little detail there, because I think the reason we're here tonight is because of that rectangle, which hopefully I'll explain as we proceed. So we're looking at some development on this site, which is the provision of 2 bunds, like seawall type earthen structures, that the applicant is proposing. It's to do with the redevelopment of the commercial site, and the planning permission for the balance of that, here we see, it's to do with the implementation of this site. There's a requirement in both your allocations plan and the planning consent to construct these landscaped bunds, which we'll see in better detail, but just to get the context of it, you've got this industrial commercial development hereby in accord with your allocation, but remember we've got this site here for gypsies and travellers as part of the development overall. And the area that's owned by the applicants at the current time includes all of the commercial and this area that we see in here, but you'll see there's this notch out, which in your allocation, the line goes through there. So they don't own all, they own most, but they don't own all of the allocated site. So they can only submit a planning application in their ownership for the bunds in as far as they extend onto their site. If we could see the levels in the bund drainage plan, please. Here we go. In a better detail now, you'll see this is the proposal. The requirements of the allocation would there be substantial buffers, and the requirements in the planning permission given is that these should be in the region of 15 metres wide. This one, the larger one along the northern edge, is about 16 to 17 metres mostly, except tapering down to 8 metres over here. And this smaller eastern bund, in as much as it can't extend onto land they don't control, that is in the region of 17 to 18 metres in width, but consistent. And the access to the site would come in through this point here, off and through the adjoining commercial development. The bunds are banked at a gradient of 1 in 3, and they would be drained at the base by a network, those with a keen eye hopefully can see, that takes a perimeter land drain round the bund base and then takes it through a holding tank to hold any surplus back and then discharge into the drainage network at the 1 in 100 year event plus 40% climate change. So if you like, the drainage is squeezed through a small hole into the drainage network, and then if there's any surplus, that's held back until such time as the storm abates, and that can still discharge at the reduced rate, put very simply. The two bunds, the northern one is slightly lower at 2.6 metres down to 1.7 metres in height, the eastern one slightly higher at 3.3 metres in height. If we could just see the landscape proposals, please. Here's in better detail. You'll see from the report that they propose some trees, and I won't go through all the species, but you'll see them set out in the report. Trees along the bund top, then sporadic shrub planting in groups, different species, and then the most of the cover of the bund is in a meadow grassland with a sort of strip of domestic grass at the bottom, presumably for trimming and maintenance. Now, on the addendum, members will see there's a correction to the analysis in the officer report of page 24. And what happened was when I measured all the site and everything, I omitted to count the full allocation. I counted what the applicant had shown as his site. So the conclusion you've got in the report is that there was a shortfall because the starting size I made accidentally smaller, whereas in actual fact, you'll see in the addendum that including the omitted strip, it comes up to the balance of land that's left to achieve the allocation that you're looking for meets the 0.75 of a hectare that is necessary for 15 plus pitches. And I think that's possibly what's brought us here tonight, is because without that, so that error, which the applicants identified. Now, if we can look at the indicative plan, I think that put in members' eyes whether with the success of this bunding, the site could be achieved. The applicants put together an indicative plan. It's okay, yeah. We've got time. This isn't for members' determination tonight. This is just an indicative plan to help us with the issue of would the bunds fit with the plots. And you'll see that the applicant has drawn over the bit of land they don't own, and they've also took the opportunity to extend the bund. The bund before you tonight is smaller, but they're hopefully showing you that this layout also accords with government standards for sites. This might not be what ends up on the site. You might come up with something better, or applicants provide something better, but this accords with government standards for layout. And you'd come in, there's a circular route, there's 15 plots in the middle of the site and 4 extras along the bottom, so you get 19 plots in that. And the access would go through the estate. Now this is not for members to determine by way of an approval or refusal or give acceptability to this layout. This is just to show that with the bunds in place, it is still possible to meet your allocation, which you'll also see from the addendum that then brought up a debate about whether a condition could be put on that would ensure that the bunds would not compromise the development of the site that you want to realise. And you'll see that both officers and the applicant have had a go at that. To conclude on the officer's point, we could only say that the wording in the condition would refer to something like a phrase, in the manner, which is too vague for the government's tests on conditions. If you put yourself in the hands of a developer building the bunds, without an agreed layout here, how would they know that their bunds are not compromising the layout? There has to be certainty and preciseness. Whereas the applicants take a view set out before you that if, actually when you look at the tests, because it's not necessary in the first place, because you can see from this plan that the worries aren't as serious as perhaps we would have thought without this. They don't believe it provides any of the tests. So how we could have gone into this with everybody agreeing is if the applicant was minded to approve that condition despite its faults, you could have put that condition on, and then if you had to enforce it later on, the applicants would have signed up to it, so they'd have undermined their position. The applicants don't see that the condition satisfies the tests. They're not at this stage saying that they would support it. And officers looking at the tests themselves find that there is a case on most of them for acceptability, but on the test of preciseness, it wouldn't. It'd be too vague. So the recommendation, Chairman, is approval without the condition, and as set out before you in the recommendation in the report.
Thank you very much. Oh, the microphone's gone. Thank you very much. We have one public speaker for this item, Mr. Gardner Hanson, the planning agent. Mr. Hanson, you sitting there. You've got 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you've got 1 minute left. Thank you. Yep.
Is that on? Yeah. Great. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Gardner Hanson. I'm from Avison Young and here on behalf of Mirastar Investments, and we are the planning consultants responsible for the project and for Phase 2. Firstly, I'd like to say we're very pleased that planning officers have recommended this application for approval tonight. And further, we strongly agree with their assessment related to the substantial benefits the proposed development will bring forward to the GT1 site. As you'll be aware, the proposed development seeks approval for the formation of landscape bunds along both the northern and eastern boundaries of the GT1 site, and has been proposed in order to address 3 particular aspects related to the arterial park development. So firstly, as detailed within tonight's addendum report, the proposed landscape bunds have been designed specifically to ensure compliance with the GT1 site allocation policy. This policy requires a minimum of 0.75 hectares to be retained, which is the estimated area required to deliver a minimum of 15 pitches in future, as shown within that indicative site layout plan. The GT1 policy also requires site boundary improvements, including a significant vegetated green buffer and measures that improve separation between the 2 sites and the 2 uses. Submitted drawings have demonstrated that the 0.75 hectares of the GT1 site will remain undeveloped, and additionally, we've provided the indicative site layout plan, including access, which has been based on National Gypsy and Traveller Site Design Guidance, which demonstrates how these 15 pitches could come forward in future. The proposed landscape buns will also deliver significant residential amenity benefits by helping to increase visual separation between the sites, incorporating high-quality landscape features, and importantly, assisting in reducing potential noise transfer between the two sites. Secondly, the proposed development has been designed to meet the requirements of conditions 10 and 11 of the Phase 2 Arterial Park Reserve Matters Permission. Condition 10 requires confirmation that a 20-meter strip along the boundaries is free from contamination, and Condition 11 requires a minimum 15-meter green buffer strip between the two sites. The supporting documents that we've submitted with the application confirm the landscape buns would be free from contamination, alongside the high-quality landscape proposals, which include a mix of native trees and shrubs, which will provide the required 15-meter green buffer between the sites. Lastly, we'd note by permitting this development, we consider this would deliver significant local sustainability benefits by enabling excess soil to remain on the site. This will thereby allow for excess soil to not be transported to local landfills, which will obviously reduce local HGV traffic on local roads. Overall, we believe the proposed landscape buns will be of great benefit to all interested parties. Our client remains committed to bringing forward Phase 2 of the Arterial Park development, and we trust and hope the committee will support planning officer's recommendation for approval and grant permission for our proposed development tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. We haven't got any other ward members here tonight, and we haven't got Mr. Newport. Oh, well, I haven't got you down. No, it's not. Yeah, so, no, right, okay. I will take you, but I said, and we haven't got Councillor Newport either. Well, you can speak on behalf of yourself. Thank you. And then, but I will put you in first, please. Right, yeah, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, apologies from Councillor Newport, as he couldn't make this evening, and he's sent his apologies, obviously, to the committee, as it stands through me. First of all, I'd approve this development. There is one reservation that I've got on this, is as much to the buns and how they are stabilised, in a word, because obviously with the amount of rain and the open space that there is, how do we stabilise those buns for future reference in development? I'm sure Mr. Strengths will give us an answer on that. And also, is there room for an official housing hut, be it, or whatever it be, that's going to be on that site with that particular outlay that you've put forward? Thank you.
Councillor Stanley, can you just, for my own benefit, because I didn't understand the last bit with the hut, can you just answer? Sorry, I didn't actually understand that.
No, that's all right.
My own benefit, sorry.
Obviously, it has to be governed. The site would have to be governed, have to have an administrator there. So where would that administrator be on that site?
Office.
Site office, yes.
That's what you're asking. Where
That's what I'm asking, right, yes, okay, please. Sorry, I should have said site office, but...
I understand site office. I don't understand hut, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Mike Strengths, would you like to answer, please? You're not on, I don't think. You're on now.
Thank you, Chairman. This layout, as I say, is to accord with the design submitted by government. So I am familiar with some sites, Romany sites, having a sort of a central office for visitors, you know, be they sort of farriers, doctors, medics. They report to the site and perhaps then escorted or shown through. This doesn't show one, but remember, this layout is not for your decision tonight. What it shows is plots would fit in the land available. It shows circulation space, bin provision, some sort of visitor parking, etc. There is some spare land down here for plots. It may be that you might substitute one plot up here for a sort of visitor centre, reception office, and develop one of these. The conclusion I think to be drawn is there's plenty of room on the site for a decent layout. Now, it wouldn't necessarily be this type. We'd have to wait for that application to come before you and see if you find it acceptable. But what I think the worry was leading up to this committee was, particularly on my maths, was that the extent of the bunds would over-dominate the site so that the actual 15 plus pitches that you've allocated it for couldn't be achieved. They'd be squeezed out by this. And the applicants responded to that with this layout, looked at the guidance that's around. I don't think there's anything I could find for Essex as such. So they've looked at the national guidance from government itself, applied that in this typical layout and said, well, look, following that guidance, it fits, no problem. But a better layout might be possible when that comes before you, when we get specialist people perhaps applying, be it county council ourselves or somebody else, that take those things into account. I would say that there are other sites that perhaps don't have those offices, but it would be down to how it's designed. We want a better site than some of those you see, say, at Hove Fields and places. So, it would be down to when that application is submitted. The point being, this application doesn't prejudice any of that.
And what about the
Sorry,
stability?
on the bundle, is it possible to show the landscaping scheme?
It's just for the stability for Councillor
I can now play
Bradley.
with this because these are constructed like sea walls. So they put probably clay soil in the bottoms, heavier, and then they cap it with topsoil for the growth of the planting. The grass binds the top together, but I'm sure members will recall seeing big, heavy track layer D8 type excavators that pound that down to make it stable. They roll it with their tracks. They don't necessarily have a roller behind, although sometimes they do, compactors. But they compress the loose material that's brought onto the site and they shape it. And then they grade off the sides to the gradient you want. So I've got no qualms that after a period of time settlement, a lot of the landscaping scheme you see, if you think of the landscaping at the end of the Bellway Hall Road scheme, that's got quite a lot of undulation that was 10 years ago a farmer's flat field. So they've allowed it to stabilise, they've put the right soils on in structure, compacted it and left it alone to settle, and that will be, I think, quite a successful space. I would expect the same thing here. I mean, there's no planning requirement for how they engineer it, but that's what you would expect, that they bring the material on, compact it down, layer it, and then finish it off with a decent coat of topsoil and then plant it after, again, a period of settlement.
Thank you. That's very similar to what we had at Cherry Orchard, isn't it? Exactly what we looked at, what members came for a visit. Councillor E, Councillor E, sorry.
Just a very simple question, really. It's related, but obviously, as this is Rochford District Council's Gypsy and Traveller site, but the site is actually owned by the developer, who's going to be responsible for the maintenance of this area?
We're not actually discussing that tonight.
No,
we're actually only discussing these bungs.
There is a reason being why, is because in association with Councillor Stanley's concerns, obviously if there are any problems with the bunds, is this something that we are then going to be looking to the developer to actually maintain going forward if there are any problems with it? Thank you.
Chairman, whilst it was owned by the applicant, it would be their responsibility. And then when they sell the site on, or are acquired, compulsory acquired on, whatever happens, it would become the responsibility of the new owner. Now, what this application would do would see the bunds provided and landscaped, so it's sitting there waiting for the next stage, and until it changes hand, it would remain the responsibility of this owner.
Thank you. Councillor Cripps and then Councillor FD.
Thank you. It's 10 years ago now, but the official position was this site will be municipally owned and run by Essex County Council. Does anybody know whether that's still the same situation? I'm just reflecting to the responsibility idea. That's what was said by the then portfolio holder at the time in 2013.
I can't answer that. We can't answer
I
that.
was just trying to help with this responsibility thing.
Yeah. I think it's been addressed because if it's sold, the new owner that's their responsibility. I think. Councillor FD, sorry.
Sorry. Thanks, Chairman. This sort of comes down to the 0.75 of a hectare, where it wasn't included before. Now it's included. So this makes the site viable. So I'd really like to go for a vote on this, I suppose, because that's what it really, motion come through to approve this. Because that's what it really comes down to. Is it the right size? Is it viable? And as far as the officers say, it is. So I'd like to put a motion through to approve this.
Councillor Williams will second it. Thank you. Right, members, we've got a motion on the table to approve this application. Can I have a show of hands, all in favour, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. I'm going to now close the meeting at 7:55. Thank you very much, members, for attending, and thank you, Mr. Hanson. Thank you.
Thank you for all your